The storm that shakes the tree does not begin in the sky. It begins in the roots. When we speak of destruction in 24 hours, we do not speak of pride, we speak of possibility. Possibility is not action. It is the fire in a sealed furnace. It exists, but it does not consume. It waits for purpose. India, with its vast military strength, satellite dominance, strategic air capabilities, cyber warfare units and nuclear triad, could indeed cripple the operational backbone of its neighbor. But to ask how is only half of the analysis. The greater question is why and to what end. Power is not proven in destruction, but in restraint. This truth has echoed through every discipline where force meets principle, whether in martial arts, warfare, leadership, or personal conduct. The ability to destroy, to overwhelm, to dominate, these are signs of strength. But they are not the measure of wisdom. True power lies in the deliberate decision not to act, even when one possesses the means to do so. It lies in the space between stimulus and response, where intention is forged in the fires of discipline. It is easy to react. It is far more difficult to observe, understand, and then choose a path that does not indulge impulse. Destruction is a loud gesture, often born from fear, ego, or desperation. Restraint, on the other hand, is quiet. It requires presence. It demands that one sees beyond the immediate moment. A nation capable of swift and overwhelming retaliation demonstrates its might through infrastructure, training, intelligence, and technology. Yet that might becomes noble only when it is guided by discernment. The ability to act does not obligate action. The ability to strike does not command that a strike be made. Restraint is not inaction. It is precise, intentional non-action. It is a higher level of control, one that protects rather than provokes, one that builds rather than breaks. This principle is as true on the battlefield as it is in daily life. A man holding a weapon may dominate others for a time, but a man who holds peace within, who holds his weapon without needing to draw it, he transforms every space he enters. Nations are no different. To be feared is a temporary advantage. To be respected for your control over fear, this is enduring power. When restraint becomes the default posture, the entire world shifts its expectations. Opponents begin to think twice. The calculus of conflict changes. Force becomes the final option, not the first. In the context of defense, restraint serves a dual purpose. It preserves life and safeguards moral clarity. It sends a signal not only to adversaries but also to allies and citizens. We are not governed by impulse. We are not here to conquer, but to protect. Possessing nuclear weapons, advanced fighter jets, cyber intelligence, and satellite systems proves capacity. But showing patience in the face of provocation proves maturity. This is not weakness. It is the highest form of strategic intelligence. A restrained power, contrary to appearances, is not passive. It is alert. It observes every move with clarity. It trains not just its soldiers, but its mind. It prepares not for conquest, but for control. Control of territory, yes, but also of time, energy, and escalation. This kind of control doesn't crumble under pressure. It bends, breathes, absorbs, and only acts when the action is aligned with a greater purpose. The decision to destroy becomes not a reflex, but a last resort guided by unshakable clarity. Restraint also fosters credibility. In international relations, unpredictability may be a short-term tactic, but stability builds long-term alliances. A restrained nation demonstrates to the world that it does not gamble with lives, that it values proportion, that its strength is not wild but refined. Over time, this builds a reputation not of fear, but of leadership. Other nations begin to look toward it not only for defense partnerships, but for moral example. It becomes a center of balance in a world often tilted by emotion. When provoked, a restrained power does not escalate. It investigates. It listens. It uses its influence not to crush, but to correct. And if correction fails, it responds in a way that restores order, not chaos. That response may still be forceful, but it is never reactive. It is shaped with intent. It aligns with the values of protection, not punishment. There is also a personal cost to unchecked destruction. War leaves behind not just broken cities, but broken minds. Generals may win battles, but their nations inherit trauma. Restraint spares not only the body, but the spirit of a nation. It says, We will not trade honor for dominance. We will not achieve victory by abandoning the principles that make us worthy of it. The deepest form of victory is not the one that ends with silence, but the one that begins with it. In ancient teachings, the strongest warrior is described as one who wins without fighting. This is not metaphor. It is a recognition that ultimate strength lies in shaping conditions so that fighting becomes unnecessary. In the modern world, where weapons can destroy cities in minutes, this wisdom is more urgent than ever. Restraint prevents irreversible mistake. It ensures that every decision passes through a filter of conscience, not just capability. There will always be those who confuse restraint with hesitation, who believe that not striking first is a sign of timidity. But this view misunderstands the nature of true power. To restrain oneself in the face of insult, provocation, or threat is to hold the fire inside, not extinguish it but shape it. This fire, when guided, becomes energy for endurance, strength, and clarity. When unrestrained, it becomes chaos. The world respects restraint more than it admits. A sudden act of violence may command headlines, but a quiet, steady refusal to act with vengeance commands trust. It creates a legacy that outlives the moment. It shows a nation's ability to lead with wisdom, not just win with weapons. So while the ability to destroy may exist and may even be perfected to operate within 24 hours, the greater proof of power is in not doing so. It is in knowing the damage one could cause and choosing instead to hold that power in silence. Not from fear, not from uncertainty, but from principle. And principle, once tested, is what separates power from domination. One may end a conflict with force, but one only ends enmity with wisdom. In the end, history does not remember only who had the greatest weapons, but who used their strength with the greatest purpose. Destruction is temporary. Restraint shapes the future. Mastery lies in readiness, not recklessness. Readiness is the quiet cultivation of discipline. It is a state of preparation that goes beyond physical resources or visible strength. It begins in the mind, in the intention behind every action, and in the awareness behind every choice. A nation that is ready does not rush. It does not boast. It does not provoke. It watches. It listens. It calculates. Readiness is the art of being able to respond with precision, not with panic. Recklessness, on the other hand, is a symptom of insecurity. It seeks validation through action, even if that action leads to chaos. It reacts instead of responding. It acts not from clarity, but from confusion disguised as courage. To be ready is to maintain strength at all times, not to display it at the wrong time. The soldier who sharpens his sword every day does not need to swing it wildly. He knows it is sharp. He knows how to use it. But more importantly, he knows when not to. A military force that practices daily, trains with intensity, drills with precision, and studies with seriousness, does not need to announce its capabilities. Its readiness is evident in its conduct. Its confidence is silent. Its power is reserved for the moment it is truly needed. Recklessness often comes dressed as bravery. It masquerades as decisive leadership, but what it lacks is sustainability. A reckless move may appear successful in the moment, but it often creates long-term instability. It breeds unpredictability. It signals to the world that power is held without balance. Readiness, by contrast, sends the message that control exists not just over weapons and strategies, but over thoughts and emotions. A ready nation is a composed nation. It does not panic under threat. It does not lash out in fear. It responds with intelligence because it has already thought through the possible outcomes. Mastery through readiness is built in small, invisible ways. It is built in every hour of disciplined training. It is built in the quiet decisions to upgrade technology, refine intelligence networks, and enhance cyber defenses. It is built in leadership that invests in people, not just in machines. It is built in decision makers who study not only tactics, but also consequences. Readiness is not something that appears overnight. It is the result of thousands of small decisions made over time with consistency and care. It cannot be faked. It cannot be borrowed. It must be earned. A reckless nation may act first, but a ready nation finishes last, with purpose. Readiness allows for flexibility. It creates space for adaptation. It ensures that no matter how the environment changes, the response remains grounded. A reckless approach, on the other hand, is rigid. It rushes forward without knowing what lies ahead. It believes strength lies in momentum, not in clarity. But momentum without direction leads to collision. Readiness, however, aligns direction with intention. It turns momentum into movement with purpose. In moments of crisis, readiness reveals itself. When systems are stressed, when threats emerge without warning, a ready nation does not scramble. It activates. It moves smoothly because the structure has been tested. The people have been prepared. The chain of command is clear. The communication is calm. This is not luck. This is not improvisation. This is mastery, and mastery cannot exist without preparation. Recklessness, by contrast, is loud in peace and chaotic in crisis. It may make headlines, but it does not make history worth remembering. A masterful strategy does not begin with offense. It begins with awareness. It studies the terrain, the opponent, the self. Readiness is a form of awareness that keeps the mind awake even when there is no visible threat. It does not become complacent in peace. It trains just as hard in calm as it does in conflict. This is why readiness produces long-term security. It does not wait for problems to occur. It anticipates, it prepares, it hardens the structure before the storm arrives. Recklessness is often fueled by ego. It needs to prove itself. It seeks recognition. It mistakes speed for strength and aggression for influence. But the world is not moved by noise. It is moved by outcomes, and outcomes are not shaped by reckless actions. They are shaped by quiet preparation. A ready force will often look ordinary from the outside. But when tested, its depth becomes visible. It does not crumble. It does not waver. It holds its form because that form has been tested again and again in training, in planning, in discipline. Mastery does not happen in the moment of conflict. It is revealed there, but it is not created there. It is created in every moment leading up to it, in the silence of early mornings, in the repetition of drills, in the analysis of past failures, in the humility to learn, improve, and remain alert. Readiness is rooted in humility. It knows that conditions can change. It knows that no strength is permanent unless maintained. It does not take success for granted. Recklessness, however, believes in luck. It trusts instinct over strategy. It acts first and thinks later. And in doing so, it gambles with everything. The second is external posture, alliances, international credibility, and a reputation for measured leadership. The nation that wins without war uses every platform, diplomatic channels, trade agreements, cultural influence to reinforce its power silently. This creates a web of influence that is difficult to confront and even harder to break. Strategic thinkers do not rush into war because they understand its true cost. They study the long-term consequences. They ask what victory looks like not just after the final bullet is fired, but decades later. They calculate the ripple effects of every move. They recognize that real power lies in control, not just of weapons or armies, but of decisions, timing, and narratives. They choose when to engage and when not to, and more often they choose not to. Victory without war is also a psychological achievement. It is the ability to manage perception. When a rival believes that attacking will lead to certain defeat or worse, mutual destruction, then peace becomes a logical outcome. This kind of victory is not about deception but clarity. It is about communicating capability so effectively that it speaks louder than aggression ever could. A country that displays both strength and control becomes untouchable, not because it hides, but because it is everywhere without being seen as a threat. One must also understand that in this form of victory, time is a weapon. Patience becomes a form of power. While others rush into conflict, the nation that wins without war watches. It studies patterns. It strengthens its internal systems. It advances its technology. It builds resilience. It waits for opportunities that allow it to achieve strategic goals without force. This is not slowness, it is precision. Like a master martial artist who does not swing wildly but strikes only when necessary, and with devastating effect. Such strategy also requires trust in one's own systems. Leaders must believe that their institutions are strong enough to handle pressure, disinformation, and threats without defaulting to violence. The military must be prepared, but also disciplined enough to hold its position until the moment absolutely requires it. The intelligence community must be sharp, agile, and silent. The people must be united, aware, and resistant to provocation. All of these elements together create a national force that can shape reality without breaking it. Victory without war is also more sustainable. It preserves resources. It maintains economic growth. It protects civilian lives. It allows education, innovation, and infrastructure to continue. It shows the world that strength is not only about how one fights, but how one lives. And in a world increasingly connected, where consequences cross borders faster than ever, this type of power is more relevant than brute force. But to win without war does not mean abandoning readiness. On the contrary, it requires the highest level of preparedness. It demands that every system is tested, that every threat is studied, that every scenario is rehearsed. Peace without preparation is fantasy. True peace is backed by strength. The world must know that while a nation may prefer diplomacy, it does not fear confrontation. It must understand that beneath the calm exterior lies an engine of defense so well constructed that disturbing it would awaken something unstoppable. When victory is achieved without violence, a nation also preserves its moral compass. It retains the respect of the global community. It earns influence not through fear, but through leadership. It does not need to explain itself constantly. Its actions speak. Its posture communicates integrity. This earns allies, and more importantly, it denies the enemy the narrative of oppression. It removes the fuel that drives conflict. It transforms the opponent not by force, but by example. This kind of strategy has been taught in every serious tradition of warfare. From Sun Tzu to modern military doctrine, the principle remains unchanged. The highest level of warfare is not to fight at all. To subdue the enemy without battle, to control outcomes through intelligence and structure, that is the ultimate form of power. And it is one that requires deep patience, strong leadership, and a commitment to long-term vision over short-term noise. In the end, the strongest nations are not those that win the most wars, but those that prevent them from happening. They use their capabilities to build balance, not instability. They use their foresight to maintain peace, not provoke enemies. They seek understanding not because they are weak, but because they are wise. And when they stand not only for themselves, but for a greater ideal. That power, when truly mastered, does not need to destroy in order to prevail. Every action casts a shadow into the future. This is the law not only of nature, but of consequence. When a decision is made at the national level, especially one involving conflict, warfare, or the application of force, it is never contained in the present moment. It radiates into generations. One must ask not only what is gained in a day, but what is lost across decades. This requires a different kind of thinking, one that moves beyond short-term satisfaction or immediate reaction. It demands foresight, it demands vision, and above all, it demands responsibility. Leaders who consider only the next move fall into traps. The leaders who consider the next era build legacies. The consequences of war are not limited to geographical borders or battlefield statistics. They enter homes, they shape identities. They influence the minds of children, harden the memories of the old. They redefine what it means to be safe. To launch an attack is to begin a cycle whose end cannot be predicted. It is to open a gate to uncertainty, to chaos, to retaliation. This cycle rarely stops with a single victory. It invites resistance. It breeds revenge. It sustains hatred. So a decision to act must be based not only on strength, but on understanding the full scale of what is at stake, not just for the enemy, but for one's own people. Long-term consequences also operate in silence. While the immediate effects of conflict are visible in the smoke, rubble, and headlines, the deeper effects surface slowly. Economies destabilize, populations migrate, borders harden, global opinion shifts, alliances are tested, trust in leadership diminishes. These changes often go unnoticed until they become irreversible. And by then the damage is not only material, it is psychological. It fragments national confidence. It replaces opportunity with fear. It installs suspicion in place of cooperation. A choice made in haste or ego can undo years of progress in diplomacy, development, and unity. There is also a moral weight that accumulates with every unnecessary act of destruction. A nation must live not only with its achievements, but with its actions. When force is used irresponsibly, it becomes difficult to reclaim the moral ground. Narratives are shaped quickly in today's interconnected world. Every image, every video, Every speech becomes evidence either of strength or of failure. If a country chooses aggression without justification or acts in a way that endangers civilians, the world sees it. And in the court of global conscience, perception is power. A nation that loses the world's respect even while winning battles eventually finds itself isolated. To consider long-term consequences is also to look inward. How will the people live with what has been done? Will they feel safer or more anxious? Will their sense of pride grow, or will it become a mask to hide discomfort with what was? The internal spirit of a nation is more fragile than its outer defenses. It must be nourished by clarity, not confusion. A country cannot afford to confuse domination with development. It must know the difference between strength and strain. When force is used as the first solution, the culture of a nation begins to change. It becomes harder, colder, less open to dialogue, more committed to defense than to vision. This shift, while subtle, determines the future more than any single military campaign. A true leader looks beyond the battlefield. He asks what happens when the fighting stops, who rebuilds, who heals, who teaches the next generation what happened, and how will they tell the story. If war becomes the teacher, then its lessons echo long after the last weapon is lowered. And those lessons may not be ones of strength, they may be ones of fear, bitterness, and division. To protect the future, the present must be held with care. Every move must be made with the awareness that young minds are watching, listening, learning. Strategic patience is not a delay tactic. It is a recognition of consequence. It is the understanding that lasting peace is more valuable than temporary dominance, and that achieving that peace may require waiting, negotiating, restraining, even when the ability to act exists. This is not weakness. It is an elevated form of responsibility. It means understanding that power must be exercised with precision and humility. That winning today must not lead to losing the next 10 years. Technology accelerates consequence. In the past, a decision made in one region could take weeks or months to affect another. Today, it happens in seconds. A misstep, a miscommunication, a reaction based on incomplete information can spiral into a global crisis. In such a world, responsibility becomes heavier. Every decision must be filtered through wisdom, not only data. It must be guided by principle, not only politics. Because one wrong move can damage relationships that took generations to build. A nation that considers the long term does not limit its focus to its own population. It understands the interconnectedness of the world. It sees that what affects one region ripples outward: refugees, food shortages, currency instability, cyber retaliation. None of these outcomes stay confined. They spread, they multiply. So a decision to strike must be weighed not only against its military gain but against its humanitarian cost. And even when the gain is clear, the cost may outweigh it. This is the discipline of foresight. To evaluate not just what is gained but what is risked. This kind of thinking does not come easily. It must be trained. It must be modeled at every level of leadership. It must be embedded in every strategic conversation. The military must be taught not only how to win battles, but how to think beyond them. Diplomats must learn not only how to negotiate deals, but how to anticipate shifts. Economists must plan not only for growth, but for resilience under stress. A whole-of-nation mindset must emerge. One that sees victory as something broader than defeat of an opponent. Victory is also the preservation of one's values, the continuation of one's development, the integrity of one's vision. The most dangerous mistake any nation can make is to believe that a war can be clean, that it can be limited, that it can be controlled from beginning to end. This belief has led to countless miscalculations. The reality is that war opens doors that cannot be closed. It releases forces, economic, political, emotional, that do not obey commands. Once unleashed, they shape reality in ways no one intended. So the decision to act must be preceded by the discipline to imagine every possible outcome and to be prepared to accept them. Leadership is measured not by the ability to escalate, but by the ability to pause, not by how much territory is claimed, but by how much life is preserved. The greatest responsibility of power is to protect the future, and that future begins not tomorrow, but with the choices made today. If those choices are made in wisdom, the shadow they cast will be one of peace. If made in haste, they will darken generations. Responsibility is not a burden, it is a privilege. It is the highest form of honor to guide a nation with care, to protect not only its people but their future. This is the true strength of leadership, not in showing what can be destroyed, but in deciding what must be preserved.